Look, I'm going to level with you right from the start. When humanity finally got invited to join the Galactic Council, we thought it would be all diplomatic dinners and trade agreements. Maybe some cultural exchange programs. You know, normal stuff. Instead, our first official summons was to watch a 400-year-old alien archaeologist have a very public midlife crisis over a rock. Commander Vex Caloran was that archaeologist, and calling him pompous would be like calling the sun slightly warm. This guy had 7 different advanced degrees, a name that took 30 seconds to pronounce correctly, and apparently 0 sense of irony. He'd spent 4 decades studying what the Council called the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history, which as far as anyone could tell was a 3-foot-tall metallic pyramid covered in symbols that nobody could read. The relic had been found on some dead moon in the Andromeda sector, tucked away in a vault that had taken 17 years and 3 planetary budgets to crack open. And ever since, Vex had been throwing everything at it except common sense. They'd bathed it in exotic radiation from 14 different nebulas. They'd had royal bloodlines from 47 different species bleed on it. They'd sung ancient songs at it. They'd performed interpretive dance around it. One particularly desperate species had even tried to seduce it, which I'm told was awkward for everyone involved. Nothing worked. The relic just sat there, looking smug in that way that inanimate objects sometimes manage. Which brings us to Captain Jake Morrison, Earth's official representative to this circus, who was only there because someone at the United Nations had drawn the short straw, and he'd been standing too close to their office. Jake was a decent pilot, a mediocre diplomat, and at that exact moment, extremely tired. He'd been on 3 different spacecraft over the past week, experienced time dilation twice, and his circadian rhythm was convinced it was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, even though it was apparently 7th cycle moon of gathering on the station's calendar. Also, he really wanted a sandwich. The ceremony chamber was massive, all vaulted ceilings and dramatic lighting, because apparently nobody in the galaxy had learned the value of subtlety. There were representatives from at least 60 species present, most of whom Jake couldn't name, all arranged in a circle around the relic like they were about to sacrifice something to it. Vex stood at the center, all 4 of his arms spread wide in a gesture that probably looked impressive on his homeworld, but just made him look like he was trying to hug a bus. "Esteemed council members," he boomed, his translator pendant working overtime. "Today we honor the traditions of the ancients. Today, we unlock the secrets of the first civilization. Today, we use the blood of kings to awaken the relic and claim our destiny among the stars." Jake leaned over to the woman next to him, Professor Mira Weston, Earth's xenoanthropologist and the only other human who'd bothered to show up. "Is he always like this?" "I've been here 3 hours," Mira whispered back. "He's been workshopping that speech the entire time. This is take 7. Did the other takes have more jazz hands?" Take 4 had interpretive dance. A dignified-looking alien with way too many tentacles stepped forward, carrying a crystal vial filled with what was presumably the blood in question. This was King Thresix of the Outer Arm dynasty, whose family tree went back so far it technically predated trees. If anyone's blood was going to work, the thinking went, it would be his. Vex took the vial with all the reverence of someone handling a live grenade made of dreams. He approached the relic, muttered something that sounded like a prayer but might have just been him hyping himself up, and carefully poured the royal blood over the artifact's surface. Everyone held their breath. The relic sat there, did nothing, continued to do nothing. "Perhaps," Vex said, his voice climbing half an octave, "we need to give it a moment to process." They gave it a moment, then several moments, then enough moments that Jake started seriously considering making a break for the buffet table he'd spotted on the way in. The relic remained stubbornly inert, and Vex's face was turning a color that probably didn't exist in nature. This was going to be a long day. 20 minutes later, Vex was sweating, literally sweating. Jake hadn't even known his species could sweat, but there it was, beating up on his forehead ridges like dew on a very stressed cactus. "The harmonics must be wrong," Vex announced to the increasingly restless crowd. "We need to recalibrate the resonance frequency to match the artifact's dimensional signature." Mira leaned over again. "That's not a real thing, is it?" "I have 3 doctorates," Jake said, and I'm pretty sure he just made that up. You have 3 doctorates? Engineering, physics, and 1 in literature because I lost a bet. Long story. They watched as Vex directed a team of technicians to set up what looked like a cross between a DJ booth and a medical scanner around the relic. Lights flashed. Exotic tones hummed through the chamber. One of the technicians started beatboxing, though Jake was pretty sure that wasn't in the official protocol. Still nothing. Perhaps, offered a squid-like counselor, the blood was not pure enough. King Thresix's grandmother did marry outside the dynasty in the 3rd generation. Thresix looked like he wanted to start an intergalactic incident over that comment. Or, said a new voice dripping with skepticism, perhaps we're all overthinking this. Jake turned to see another human walking up, a coffee cup in one hand and a data pad in the other. She was younger than Mira, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and an expression that suggested she'd seen this exact flavor of nonsense before. Professor Mira Weston, meet Dr. Ellie Park, Mira said. Ellie's our lead engineer for the mission. Ellie, this is Captain Morrison. Call me Jake, please. The captain thing makes me feel like I should be on a boat. Ellie nodded. Nice to meet you. Quick question. Has anyone tried just turning it off and on again? Vex spun around so fast he nearly tripped over his own robes. This is a sacred artifact from the first civilization, not a malfunctioning toaster. Sure, but have you tried it? The protocols clearly state that the relic requires a ceremonial awakening through the application of royal essence combined with the proper harmonic resonance. Right, but who wrote those protocols? Vex opened his mouth, then closed it. Scholars throughout the centuries have analyzed the circumstances of the relic's discovery and extrapolated the most likely activation methodology. So you guessed. It was an educated guess. It was still a guess. Before Vex could work himself into a full diplomatic incident, there was a loud clang from somewhere behind the relic. Everyone jumped. A panel in the floor had popped open, and a green-skinned alien in a maintenance jumpsuit climbed out, tool belt jangling. Sorry, he said, waving one hand. Routine conduit check, don't mind me. Hey, is this that blood ceremony thing? How'd it go? Glorp, Vex said, his voice strained. This is hardly the time. Right. Failed again, huh? Glorp scratched his head. That's what, attempt 97? Or was it 98? Your discretion is noted and unappreciated. Just saying at some point you might want to consider that the activation method isn't, blood-based. Glorp shrugged and started closing his panel. But what do I know? I just keep this station running. Jake was starting to like Glorp. He was also starting to notice just how far away that buffet table was. He took a step backward, trying to angle himself toward the exit without being too obvious about it. The problem was that the ceremonial circle was packed tighter than a subway car at rush hour, and someone's ceremonial tail ornaments were blocking his path. He shifted to the left, squeezed between 2 dignitaries who were arguing about harmonic frequencies, and found himself suddenly much closer to the relic than he'd intended. Excuse me, he muttered, trying to sidestep around it. That's when his jacket caught on one of the relic's protruding edges. He yanked it free, felt a sharp sting on his hand, and swore under his breath. You okay? Ellie asked. Yeah, just caught my hand on the corner. Thing's sharper than it looks. He glanced down at his palm where a thin line of red was welling up. Paper cut. Fantastic. He hadn't survived 3 years in deep space just to get defeated by ancient alien geometry. A single drop of blood fell from his hand, tumbled through the air in what felt like slow motion, and landed directly on the relic's surface. For exactly half a second, nothing happened. Then the entire artifact lit up like someone had plugged it into a star. The chamber erupted in light. Not the soft, mystical glow of a sacred artifact revealing its secrets. No. This was more like someone had detonated a flashbang grenade at a rave. Symbols on the relic's surface blazed electric blue, spinning and rearranging themselves in patterns that hurt to look at directly. A low hum filled the air, building in intensity until Jake could feel it vibrating in his teeth. By the ancients, Vex breathed, and for once his dramatic tone seemed appropriate. What did you do? Mira grabbed Jake's arm. I bled on it. I didn't mean to bleed on it. Well, unbleed on it. That's not how blood works. The light expanded and suddenly a holographic interface materialized above the relic, floating in mid-air like the galaxy's most aggressive pop-up ad. Symbols scrolled across it, alien and incomprehensible, shifting and changing faster than anyone could track. Vex practically teleported to the relic's side, his earlier embarrassment forgotten in the face of scientific vindication. It's activated. After 40 years, it's finally activated. He turned to the crowd, all forearms raised in triumph. You see? My theories were correct. The ceremonial approach was sound, it simply required the proper catalyst and— You poured royal blood on it for 20 minutes and nothing happened, Ellie interrupted. Then Jake accidentally cut himself and it turned on immediately. I'm no archaeologist, but I think we can establish causation here. Vex's triumphant expression crumbled. That's not— The accumulation of the previous attempts clearly primed the artifact for— Dude, Glorp called from his spot by the maintenance panel. Just take the L. The holographic interface pulsed and a new symbol appeared, this one larger and more insistent than the others. It was flashing red, which in Jake's experience was never a good sign regardless of what species built the technology. Anyone recognize these symbols? Mira had her tablet out, snapping pictures as fast as it could process them. I've got 17 xenolinguistic analysis programs running, and none of them are finding matches. They're not in any known language database, confirmed a counselor with too many eyes. The symbols don't correspond to any recorded civilization, ancient or modern. Jake squinted at the display, tilting his head. There was something familiar about the way the symbols were arranged. The spacing, the geometric relationships between them. He'd seen something like this before, but where? The interface pulsed again, and this time the symbols rearranged themselves into what was clearly a diagram. 3 circles connected by lines with smaller symbols radiating outward in a specific pattern. Okay. That looks like a control schematic, Ellie said, moving closer. See how the primary nodes connect to secondary subsystems? This is some kind of operational interface. But for what? Vex was practically vibrating with excitement now, his earlier embarrassment completely forgotten. What is it trying to tell us? Jake kept staring at the diagram, his engineer brain automatically processing the relationships between components. The way the circles were connected, the branching pattern of the subsystems, the ratio of the measurements. And then it clicked. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Everyone turned to look at him. What? Mira asked. What do you see? It's a manual transmission. Silence. I'm sorry, Vex said slowly. Did you just say manual transmission? From a car, like a vehicle, that diagram right there? Jake pointed at the holographic display. That's exactly how my dad's old pickup truck transmission was laid out. 3 gears, see? Clutch assembly here, drive shaft here, gear ratios branching out from the central axis. That's ridiculous, Vex sputtered. This is a relic from the first civilization, not a primitive ground transport vehicle. I mean, it's definitely more advanced than a pickup truck, Jake admitted. But the underlying schematic is the same. Look, I rebuilt that transmission 4 times in high school. I know what I'm looking at. Ellie pulled up her own tablet, running comparisons. Her eyes widened. He's right. Adjusting for the exotic components and the dimensional folding, this is functionally identical to a mechanical transmission system. Clutch gears, output shaft, it's all here. But why would the first civilization use such a primitive design? Asked one of the counselors. Because it works, Jake said. Manual transmissions are simple, efficient, and nearly impossible to break. If you're building something meant to last millions of years, you don't overcomplicate it. You use what's proven. The interface pulsed again, and a new symbol appeared. This one Jake definitely recognized. It was an arrow pointing directly at him. Okay, Mira said. So the ancient alien artifact is now gesturing at you. That's a thing that's happening. Should I touch it? Jake asked. Probably not, Ellie said. Definitely not, Mira added. Oh, absolutely you should, Vex said. All scientific ethics apparently going out the window in the face of potential discovery. Glorp raised his hand. I'm just here to officially note that touching mysterious activated alien artifacts is against at least 6 different station safety regulations. Noted, Jake said, and reached for the interface. The moment his fingers made contact with the holographic display, the entire chamber lurched. The symbols rearranged themselves again, faster now, scrolling through what looked like menu options. Every time Jake moved his hand, the display responded, following his gestures like it was custom-built for his specific neurological input patterns. Which, as it turned out, it absolutely was. "It only responds to him," breathed a counselor in the back. Vex looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. "But that's impossible. The relic predates humanity by millions of years. There's no possible way it could be specifically calibrated to human neurology unless—" He stopped mid-sentence, his face going through several colors that definitely weren't natural. "Unless what?" Mira prompted. Vex didn't answer. He was staring at the relic with an expression Jake had seen before, usually on the faces of students who'd just realized they'd spent 6 months solving the wrong equation. "Oh no," Vex whispered. "Oh no?" Jake repeated. "I don't like oh no. Oh no is never good." The interface pulsed one more time, and then it displayed something that everyone in the chamber could understand. A simple greeting in every major galactic language, scrolling across the holographic display like the world's most overachieving welcome mat. But it was the last line that made everyone go silent. In perfect, unaccented English, the relic said, "Welcome home." The chamber descended into chaos. Counselors were shouting over each other in at least 20 different languages, none of which Jake's translator could keep up with. Vex had slumped against a pillar, staring at the ceiling like he was questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment. King Thresix was demanding answers in a voice that suggested someone was about to lose a planet or two. "Everybody shut up." Glorp's voice cut through the noise, amplified by his suit's comm system. For a maintenance engineer, the guy had impressive authority. The chamber actually quieted down. "Right, so, the ancient artifact speaks English and apparently knows Captain Morrison personally. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this requires some investigation before we all start a panic." "Investigation?" Vex laughed, high and slightly unhinged. "Investigation? My entire life's work has just been invalidated by a paper cut. Your life's work was spent trying to unlock something that apparently wasn't even locked," Mira pointed out, which really didn't help Vex's emotional state. The holographic interface was still hovering there, still displaying that cheerful, "Welcome home" message like it hadn't just detonated 40 years of academic research. Jake reached out tentatively and touched another symbol. The display shifted immediately, cycling through what looked like a menu system. "Okay, so it definitely responds to me and only me," he confirmed. "Anyone want to explain why an alien artifact from before humanity even existed knows my species' primary language?" "Several hypotheses present themselves," said a tall, crystalline counselor named Zara. Her species communicated through light refraction, which always gave her statements an eerie, echoing quality. None of them are particularly comfortable. "Try me," Jake said. At this point, Comfortable left the building. Zara gestured at the relic with one faceted limb. "Hypothesis 1, convergent evolution. Perhaps the first civilization developed a language structure that coincidentally mirrors human English." "That's statistically impossible," Ellie said. "We're talking about the exact same linguistic structure, syntax, and vocabulary. Convergent evolution doesn't work that way." "Agreed," Zara continued. Hypothesis 2. Humans somehow encountered the relic before, learned its language, and incorporated it into their own. "Our earliest written language is maybe 6,000 years old," Mira said. "This thing predates that by a factor of 1,000. Also, Earth's archaeological record has exactly 0 evidence of ancient alien contact." "Which brings us," Zara said slowly, "to Hypothesis 3. Everyone waited. "Humans built it." The silence was deafening. "That's impossible," Vex said, but his voice was weak. "Humanity is barely 3 centuries into space travel. The first civilization disappeared millions of years ago. The timeline doesn't work." Jake was still poking at the interface, watching symbols rearrange themselves. One section caught his eye. It looked like a tutorial mode, the kind you'd get in any decently designed software. He pressed it. The holographic display expanded, filling half the chamber with what could only be described as the galaxy's most aggressive instruction manual. Images began cycling through: star systems, planetary engineering, spacecraft designs that made modern vessels look like stone axes. And in every single image, the beings operating the technology looked distinctly, undeniably humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, forward-facing eyes. The basic body plan was identical to humans, right down to the opposable thumbs and the way they held tools. "Oh, come on," Jake muttered. "This has to be a coincidence." But as the images continued, the resemblance became impossible to ignore. These weren't just humanoid, they were human. Different fashion sense, sure. Apparently, the first civilization never met a flowing robe they didn't love. But the faces, the builds, the body language, all unmistakably human. "The first civilization was human," Mira breathed. "That's what we're looking at. Humans. Our ancestors." Impossible. Vex had recovered enough to be indignant again. The first civilization was ancient, powerful, technologically supreme. Humans are... He caught himself. "Are what?" Jake asked mildly. "Are," Vex amended carefully, "relatively new to the galactic stage." "You were going to say primitive, weren't you?" The word may have crossed my mind. The tutorial continued, showing what appeared to be a historical timeline. Images of Earth appeared, but not modern Earth. This was Earth millions of years ago, lush and green and completely empty of cities. The images showed the first civilization developing technology, building cities, reaching for the stars. And then they showed them leaving. "Hold on," Ellie said, leaning forward. Are they abandoning Earth?" The images confirmed it. Massive colony ships launching into space, taking the entire population with them. The cities left behind, empty. And then, in what had to be time-lapse, those cities crumbling, being reclaimed by nature, vanishing into geological time like they'd never existed. "They left," Jake said. "The first civilization left Earth millions of years ago. Just packed up and left." "But why?" asked Zara. The tutorial helpfully provided an answer. More images cycled through, showing the first civilization spreading across the galaxy, building new worlds, engineering entire star systems. And then, text appeared in English. "Primary experiment. Long-term evolutionary development without technological influence. Projected duration. 10 million cycles. Desired outcome. Natural development of spacefaring capability through independent innovation." Jake read it twice to make sure he understood. "They left Earth to see what evolution would do. We're the experiment." "An experiment that took 10 million years," Mira said faintly. "They left Earth, let evolution run its course, and waited to see if humanity would develop naturally and make it to space on our own. That's insane," Vex said. "That's science," Glorp countered. "Long-term, admittedly, but still science." The interface pulsed again, bringing up a new screen. This one showed a countdown, or rather, a count-up. It had been tracking time since the first civilization left Earth. 10,300,000 and change years. "The experiment's over," Jake said quietly. "We made it to space. We passed the test." He looked around the chamber at all the assembled species, all the alien faces staring at the holographic display. The first civilization wasn't mysterious aliens. They were humans, ancient humans who got really good at engineering and then left to see if their descendants could figure it out on their own. "This is going to destroy the entire field of xenoarchaeology," Vex said numbly. "On the bright side," Glorp offered. "At least now you know what the relic does." "What does it do?" Zara asked. Jake pressed another symbol, and a 3-dimensional schematic appeared, showing a complex network of technology spanning multiple star systems. At the center of it all was a vault symbol, pulsing with potential. "It's a key," Jake said. a key to the first civilization's entire technology database. Everything they learned, everything they built, everything they discovered. They left it behind for us to find when we were ready. When humans were ready, Ellie corrected, it only responds to human DNA. Specifically, to baseline human DNA that hasn't been genetically modified. How do you know that? Mira asked. Because I've been scanning Jake this whole time. And the Relic's recognition pattern matches exactly 0 genetic markers that would indicate artificial enhancement. It's keyed to pure Homo sapiens. The first civilization locked their legacy behind a DNA key that only their original descendants would carry. Jake looked at his hand, at the small cut that was already starting to heal. So let me get this straight. I accidentally activated the galaxy's greatest mystery by bleeding on it, and now we've discovered that humans are actually the oldest spacefaring species in recorded history. We just took a 10-million-year coffee break. That's about the size of it, Glorp agreed. Fantastic, Jake said. Anyone know where I can get that sandwich? The immediate chaos took about 3 hours to die down. 3 hours of emergency council sessions, hastily convened scientific committees, and at least 6 different species claiming that the data was obviously corrupted and nothing discovered today could possibly be accurate. Jake spent most of that time sitting on the floor next to the Relic, eating a sandwich that Glorp had somehow procured from the station's mess hall, while Ellie ran every scan known to science on both him and the artifact. Blood type O negative, Ellie read from her tablet. No genetic modifications, no cybernetic implants, no exposure to mutagenic compounds. You're about as baseline human as they come, Jake. My mom always said I was disappointingly normal. Your mom clearly didn't account for 10-million-year-old contingency plans. Vex had recovered from his existential crisis enough to be professionally devastated instead of personally devastated. He was pacing back and forth in front of the Relic, muttering to himself in a language Jake's translator kept rendering as academically distressed. 40 years, Vex kept saying. 40 years studying the wrong hypothesis. Do you have any idea how many papers I published on the mystical origins of the first civilization? How many lectures I gave about their ascension beyond physical form? Look at the bright side, Mira offered. Now you get to publish papers explaining why everyone was wrong. That's got to be worth something. I was everyone. I was the leading voice in first civilization studies. I'm going to spend the rest of my career writing retractions. Glorp patted him on the shoulder with surprising gentleness. Hey, at least you'll have job security. The interface had continued displaying information, and Mira was documenting all of it with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just won the academic lottery. The story it told was both fascinating and deeply weird. The first civilization, ancient humanity, Jake had to keep reminding himself, had reached a technological peak about 10 million years ago. They'd mastered faster-than-light travel, terraforming, artificial intelligence, the works. They'd spread across multiple galaxies, built megastructures that made modern engineering look like kindergarten art projects, and generally done everything a successful spacefaring species could do, and then they got bored. Seriously? Jake said, reading the translated text. They left Earth to run an evolution experiment because they were bored? It's not quite that simple, Mira said, scrolling through the historical records. According to this, there was a philosophical movement among the first civilization. They'd reached the point where they could engineer anything, terraform anything, build anything, but they started questioning whether they'd lost something essential in the process, the ability to grow and change naturally. So they decided to start over, Ellie said, reading over Mira's shoulder. Leave a population of baseline humans on Earth, remove all trace of their technology, and see if natural evolution and cultural development would produce something different from what they'd become. And they waited 10 million years to find out, Jake added. That's commitment to the scientific method. The record showed that the first civilization had done this before, actually. 7 other planets, seeded with baseline human populations, left to develop naturally. Earth was experiment number 8. What happened to the other 7? Zara had joined them, her crystalline form refracting the holographic light in unsettling patterns. Mira pulled up the data. Experiment 1, Population died out due to planetary climate change. Experiment 2 developed spaceflight but destroyed themselves in a nuclear war before achieving interstellar capability. Experiment 3 through 6. Various failure states including ecological collapse, asteroid impact, and one case of collective decision to return to pre-technological society. And Experiment 7? Jake asked. Currently thriving. They achieved spaceflight about 50,000 years ago and are classified as a peaceful federation in the Triangulum sector. Jake blinked. Wait, there are other humans out there? Apparently. The first civilization tagged them as successful experiment and left them alone to develop naturally. They don't know their origin story, and the records suggest the first civilization wanted to keep it that way until both experimental populations achieved interstellar capability independently. So we're the second successful experiment, Ellie said. Humanity, take 2. We took a lot longer than Experiment 7, but we made it. The interface pulsed again, and a new section opened up. This one made everyone go very quiet. It was a vault, a massive, galaxy-spanning network of technology repositories, each one containing centuries of research and development from the first civilization. The schematic showed hundreds of installations, each one hidden in deep space or buried on remote moons, all waiting for someone with the right DNA to unlock them. This is everything, Vex breathed, his earlier devastation forgotten in the face of the sheer scope of what they were looking at. Propulsion systems centuries beyond our current capability, energy generation, medical technology, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. It's all here. And it only unlocks for humans, Zara said quietly. Specifically for baseline humans like Captain Morrison. The political implications hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. The Council is going to lose their minds, Glorp observed. Humanity just went from junior members to potentially the most technologically advanced species in known space. Not potentially, Ellie corrected, studying the schematics. Definitely. If even 10% of this technology is functional, Earth could leapfrog every other species by centuries. Jake set down his sandwich. Okay, but let's think about this for a second. The first civilization left because they'd reached the point where technology wasn't making them happy anymore. They were so advanced that they'd lost something important, and their solution was to start over and see if their descendants could do better. Your point? Zara asked. My point is that maybe they left all this technology behind as a resource, not as an instruction manual. Like they're saying, here's everything we learned. Now don't make the same mistakes we did. Mira nodded slowly. That would explain why the relic required accidental activation. They didn't want to hand their descendants an easy answer. They wanted us to develop on our own first so we'd have the wisdom to use their technology responsibly. Bold assumption about human wisdom, Ellie muttered. Fair. The interface displayed one more section. A message written in English clearly meant for whoever finally activated the relic. Jake read it aloud. To our descendants, if you're reading this, you've survived. You've grown. You've reached for the stars on your own terms, with your own innovations following your own path. We left you these tools not because we think you need them, but because every generation should have the choice to learn from those who came before. Use them wisely. Use them better than we did. And remember, technology is a tool, but humanity is a choice. Choose well. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Well, Glorp finally said, that's either the most inspiring thing I've ever heard, or the most ominous. Possibly both. Definitely both, Jake agreed. Zara's light pulsed in a pattern that Jake's translator rendered as thoughtful consideration. The Council will need to discuss this. The implications for galactic politics, resource distribution, power balance. Yeah, Jake interrupted. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion. Probably several years of discussion, maybe a few decades of committees, but right now I've got a question that's bugging me. What question? Vex asked. Jake gestured at the relic, at the holographic interface still displaying the vast network of first civilization technology. If I'm the one who activated this thing and it only responds to baseline human DNA, does that mean I'm personally responsible for deciding what happens next? Everyone looked at each other. "Oh no," Mira said. "Oh no," Ellie agreed. "I don't like oh no," Jake said. "We talked about oh no earlier. Oh no is bad." But the interface was already confirming it. New text appeared, designating Jake Morrison as primary operator, First Civilization Technology Vault, with full access rights and authorization to begin unlocking the network. "So," Glorp said cheerfully, "who wants to tell the captain that he just became the most important human in galactic history?" Jake looked at his half-eaten sandwich, looked at the glowing relic, looked at the assembled council members who were all staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror to calculating political interest. "I really should have stayed in bed today," he said. The council argued for 6 hours straight, not 6 hours total. 6 continuous hours of uninterrupted debate, during which Jake seriously considered whether activating ancient alien technology was worth the migraine he was developing. The positions were predictable. Some species wanted immediate access to the first civilization's technology. Others wanted it locked away for another 10 million years. A few suggested destroying it entirely. One particularly paranoid counselor suggested destroying Jake instead, which got them ejected from the chamber and probably added to a watch list somewhere. Through it all, the relic sat there, glowing faintly, responding to Jake and absolutely nobody else. They'd tested 14 other humans from Earth's diplomatic delegation. Nothing. The relic wanted Jake specifically, or more accurately, it wanted someone with Jake's exact baseline genetic profile. "It's not random," Ellie explained during one of the brief recesses. "The first civilization designed the lock to respond to humans who haven't been genetically modified at all. No gene therapy, no inherited modifications, nothing. Just pure evolutionary genetics." "And that's me?" Jake asked. "I'm just that boring?" "You're that baseline. Most of humanity has at least some genetic modification at this point, even if it's just inherited immunity boosts or health optimizations, but your family line apparently never went for any of that." "My family's too stubborn to improve themselves," Jake muttered. "Finally pays off, I guess." Mira had spent the entire recess writing notes for what she was already calling the paper that will rewrite xenoanthropology. She looked up long enough to add, "The marker isn't just about being baseline. The relic is scanning for specific genetic sequences that indicate direct descent from the original Earth population. You're not just unmodified, Jake. You're a direct genetic link to the humans who existed before the first civilization left." "Great, so I'm basically a really old family heirloom. You're the key to the greatest technological repository in galactic history." I liked heirloom better. Less pressure. When the council reconvened, King Thresix stood to address the chamber. "The Outer Arm Dynasty proposes a compromise. Captain Morrison will be designated as primary operator of the First Civilization Vault network. However, all technology released from said vaults must be reviewed by a council oversight committee before distribution." "Oversight committee?" Jake asked. "That sounds like code for bureaucracy." "It's absolutely code for bureaucracy," Glorp whispered from his spot at the back. "Welcome to galactic politics." Vex, who had spent the recess oscillating between scientific fascination and professional despair, raised one hand. "I propose that any first civilization technology be studied extensively before deployment. We should establish research protocols, safety standards, and ethical guidelines." "That's just more committees," Jake said. "It's practical caution," Vex countered. "The first civilization left because they'd become too advanced for their own good. We should learn from their mistakes, not repeat them." Zara's crystalline form refracted light across the chamber. "The Stellar Compact agrees with Commander Vex. We propose a joint research initiative. All species contribute scientific expertise. Humans maintain operational control through Captain Morrison. Technology is released gradually with full council approval." "So I unlock the vaults," Jake said slowly. "But a committee decides what we actually do with anything inside them?" "Essentially, yes," Zara confirmed. "And how long will this committee take to approve anything?" "Council approval processes typically require 6 to 8 cycles," offered one counselor. "Months?" Jake asked hopefully. "Years," Glorp translated. "He means years." Jake looked at the relic, still glowing patiently, then at the assembled council members, all watching him with varying degrees of expectation and concern. He thought about the first civilization's message about choosing wisely, about using technology better than they had. "Fine," he said, "but I've got conditions." The council went quiet. First, Earth gets full council membership, not junior status, not probationary. Full voting rights, full access to galactic markets and resources. If I'm going to be your key to ancient technology, my planet gets a seat at the table. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, but no one objected outright. Second, any technology we unlock gets shared, not sold, not licensed. Shared. Every species that wants to participate in the research gets access to the data. The first civilization left this stuff behind for humanity, but that doesn't mean we're going to hoard it like dragons. That's remarkably altruistic, Zara observed. That's remarkably practical, Jake corrected. The first civilization got in trouble by isolating themselves. I'm not about to make the same mistake. We're in this together or not at all. And third? Prompted Thresix. Third, I wanted in writing that I'm not doing this full time. I'm a pilot, not a vault operator. We train other baseline humans to access the relics, we establish a rotation, and I get to go back to my actual job at least 50% of the time. You want to unionize the position of most important human in the galaxy? Ellie asked, amused. I want work-life balance. Sue me. The council deliberated for another hour, but ultimately agreed. The resolution was formal, laden with diplomatic language, and came with approximately 10,000 pages of regulations, oversight protocols, and safety guidelines that Jake would probably never read. But the core points were clear. Earth got full council membership. The technology would be shared. Jake would be the primary operator, with authority to train additional baseline humans for the role. And most importantly, there would be so much bureaucratic oversight that nothing remotely dangerous could be deployed without at least 47 different committees signing off on it. Congratulations, Mira said when the session finally ended. You just became the most powerful person in galactic politics and simultaneously ensured that power is wrapped in so much red tape it can barely function. That was the idea, Jake said. The first civilization's message said technology is a tool, but humanity is a choice. Well, I'm choosing not to move fast and break things. I'm choosing slow, careful, and boring. Boring might be the most revolutionary choice you could make, Ellie observed. Glorp had wandered over, his maintenance gear jangling. So, now that you're officially important, you still want that station tour I promised you? Glorp, I would love nothing more than a tour of the maintenance tunnels and zero responsibility for ancient alien technology. Good, because the waste reclamation system has been making a weird noise and I could use a second opinion. As they headed for the exit, Vex called out, Captain Morrison, a moment. Jake turned back. The alien archaeologist looked tired, but there was something like respect in his multifaceted eyes. I spent 40 years convinced the first civilization was something other than what they were, Vex said quietly. Something transcendent, mystical, beyond human understanding. And it turns out they were just people, extremely advanced people, but people nonetheless. Is that disappointing? Jake asked. Honestly, it's a relief. Vex managed something that might have been a smile. Mysteries are exciting, but they're also frustrating. Now we have answers. Wrong answers to the questions I was asking, perhaps, but answers nonetheless. That's progress. Plus, now you get to study actual first civilization technology instead of just guessing about it. There is that, Vex admitted. Though I suspect your committees will ensure I spend more time filling out research proposals than doing actual research. Welcome to bureaucracy. It's terrible, but it's better than the alternative. Jake found Mira waiting in the corridor outside, tablet in hand, already organizing her data. This is going to take years to properly analyze, she said, but she was smiling. Decades probably, maybe centuries. Good thing you've got job security, Jake said. Good thing humanity has a future, she corrected. They stood there for a moment, looking back at the chamber where the relic still glowed. where the greatest mystery in galactic history had been solved by a paper cut and a guy who just wanted lunch. You know what's funny? Jake said. The first civilization spent 10 million years waiting to see if we'd make it to space. All that time, all that preparation, all those fail-safes and backup plans, and in the end it came down to me being clumsy enough to cut myself on their welcome mat. That's not funny, Mira said. That's profoundly appropriate. How so? Because humanity didn't reach the stars through perfect planning or destiny or mystical significance. We made it through stubbornness, luck, and occasionally just stumbling into success. That's who we are, that's who we've always been. The first civilization was human enough to know that, and human enough to plan for it. Jake thought about that. About 10 million years of evolution, of trial and error, of countless generations building on each other's work until finally, humanity had clawed its way back to the stars on its own terms. So what now? He asked. Now we do the boring work, Mira said. Research, analysis, careful methodical study. We learn from what the first civilization left behind, we take our time, and we try not to make the same mistakes they did. Boring and slow. Boring and slow, she agreed. Welcome to the rest of your life, Captain Morrison. Jake glanced down at his hand, where the paper cut had already healed, leaving not even a scar. The smallest wound in human history that had unlocked the biggest secret in the galaxy. You know what? He said. I can live with that. Behind them, the relic continued to glow, patient and ancient, waiting for humanity to decide what to do with the legacy they'd been left. It would wait as long as it needed to. After 10 million years, what was a few more decades of committee meetings? The greatest mystery in galactic history had been solved by human clumsiness, human stubbornness, and human bureaucracy. Somehow that felt exactly right.